Sasuke, the prodigious young ninja from Rokaku. As with many characters in the games, not much was revealed about Sasuke in Suikoden 2 except that he was trained by Mondo and he has a big crush on Kasumi. Luckily for fans of his, Sasuke received a short story titled Chronicle of the Young Ninja, which was included in the Genso Suikoden Short Story Collection 2, a book that released in Japan in May 2001. This story takes place right after the events of Suikoden 1 in the solar year 457. It tells the story of how Sasuke, who was driven by a desire to become stronger, sought out to procure a rune by any means necessary. Chapter 1. The story opens with a shuriken being thrown at Sasuke from behind and grazing his ear. Sasuke immediately began to run and jumped into a dense grove of trees to evade his pursuer. As he suppressed his breathing and lay face down beneath the foliage to observe his surroundings, he wondered who was pursuing him. Usually his pursuers would give up if he ran away and hid, but this time was different. His pursuer chased him relentlessly, and today was the first time he'd ever had a shuriken thrown at him. Sasuke suddenly gasped for air in surprise as he heard the voice of an irritated man behind a tree a short distance away. The man told Sasuke that he's always running and tauntingly asked him if he can't come up with any other tricks. The man's taunts had no effect and Sasuke remained silent, having no intention to reveal himself. He silently moved through the bushes and concentrated his senses on the direction the voice was coming from. He could hear the soft sound of clothing rubbing and sensed his opponent was preparing another attack. He grabbed a piece of wood and removed a piece of fishing line from his pocket and tied them together. He crawled out from under the bushes and threw the piece of wood to his pursuer's right. As the man instinctively turned and threw a shuriken at the piece of wood, Sasuke moved and hid himself behind a tree. Sasuke tugged on the fishing line and the piece of wood rustled and moved through the bushes. Shurikens flew towards the piece of wood and the man once again taunted Sasuke to reveal himself. Sasuke peeked from behind the tree and saw a familiar angular face with a dark beard. It was Mondo. Ah yes, Mondo with his famously dark hair. Sasuke burst into laughter at the sight of Mondo, who was dressed more like a carpenter than a ninja. Mondo's eyes lit up as he spotted Sasuke and he threw a shuriken in Sasuke's direction. The shuriken pierced the sleeve on Sasuke's right arm and embedded itself in a tree behind him. Mondo threw 3 more shurikens and they pierced Sasuke's left sleeve, the hem of his kimono and his crotch. Sasuke was now nailed to the tree by the 4 shurikens. Sasuke tried to escape, but before he could free himself, Mondo was standing in front of him, and with a thunderous shout and an intense gaze, Mondo called him an idiot. Mondo began berating Sasuke, asking him what the hell he's doing, that everyone in the hamlet is working hard, and here he is playing around instead of helping. Sasuke commented that Mondo has something to say about everything he does and asked him what's this as he raised his hand to draw Mondo's attention to the shurikens pinning him to the tree. Sasuke told him that even though they're blunts for training, he can't be throwing them the way he does in case they hit the wrong place. Mondo replied that it's a good punishment for children who misbehave and don't listen to instructions. He then told Sasuke to return to the hamlet unless he wants some more. Sasuke agreed to return to the hamlet, realizing he had no choice but to listen to Mondo's words. Suddenly, the angry, intense expression on Mondo's face changed into a gentle smile, almost as if he felt bad for admonishing Sasuke. He told Sasuke that it's okay to be naughty sometimes, but it's important for him to help out as everybody is working hard to rebuild Rokaku, and if he continues to slack off, he'll be punished. Sasuke said he understands, and Mondo pulled out all of the shurikens pinning him to the tree as he told him it's time they returned to the hamlet. The story then provides a short explanation about life in Rokaku. Both Sasuke and Mondo were ninjas from Rokaku Hamlet. Sasuke was only 10 years old and still a member of Swallow House. When children of Rokaku turned 4, they were brought to Swallow House where they lived until the age of 12. Swallow was a general term given to the children who lived there, and Mondo was their instructor. Mondo held the rank of Chunin, or middle ninja. Although Mondo was very strict with the children when it came to training, he was also very kind and generous, which earned him their respect. When Sasuke first came to Swallow House, he had no memories of his life before. He grew up not knowing his parents' faces. Sasuke was the only child at Swallow House who didn't know his parents, and Mondo had taken care of them all on their parents' behalf. According to Mando, his parents were sent on an important mission and they left him at Swallow House before departing. Along with Mando, Sasuke had another person he looked up to and adored. It was a girl 6 years his senior. They spent 2 years in Swallow House together where she became like an older sister figure to him. Her body bore a Shrike rune and her talent left even Mando in awe. As Sasuke and Mando approached Rokaku, Sasuke could hear the faint laughter of a girl coming from the direction of the hamlet and he suddenly remembered the girl he admired. Sasuke asked Mando how many more houses needed to be built and wondered when the hamlet would be back to normal. Mando laughed at his question and commented that Sasuke is already thinking about the work being finished without even lifting a finger to help. Sasuke told him it'll be nice to live in a house again and now that the war is over, they should all live together as soon as possible. Mando gave Sasuke a teasing smile as he asked Sasuke if he's hoping she'll return soon. Embarrassed and caught off guard by Mando's comments, Sasuke tried covering his face and replied it's not like that. Mando walked out of the forest and stood at the edge of the cliff, and while pointing at the scenery below, he told Sasuke to come take a look. Sasuke obediently followed Mando and stood beside him. Nestled in a valley surrounded by a forest were 6 houses being constructed from newly cut wood. The largest building was the residence of Hanzo, the leader of the hamlet, and among the houses they could spot all of the villagers working hard to rebuild their homes. Mando commented it'll take another month or so to rebuild Rokaku, and then, with a serious look in his eyes, he looked down at Sasuke and asked him if he knows that even when their village is rebuilt, the old Rokaku won't return. Sasuke was puzzled by Mando's question, but after thinking for a while, he commented he thinks so as he pointed to a pile of rubble on the outskirts of the hamlet. The rubble of the old houses which had been destroyed by the Scarlet Moon Empire had been cleared to make way for the new houses. About 2.5 years ago, Tiamat Dol raided Rokaku and burned it to the ground when they refused to submit to Imperial rule. Looking at the rubble, Sasuke's mind was full of memories of that day. It was a windy winter evening when Sasuke was 8 years old. Relations between Rokaku and the Scarlet Moon Empire had been souring, and Hanzo had just driven out an Imperial emissary who urged them to surrender and submit to their rule. The children in Swallow House shared many stories, and they wondered when the war against the Empire would begin. The children discussed how they'd fight the Empire and began forming strategies and plans such as digging pitfalls around Rokaku and setting up traps in the forest to entangle the Imperial soldiers. However, those plans quickly dissipated and the house fell silent the moment the front door opened with a loud bang. Hien, the Vice-Chancellor of Rokaku, had just entered the house with Mando behind him. Like Hanzo, Hien always kept his face covered with a black cloth and the children found his appearance to be scary, but Hien was affectionate towards the children and he was especially kind towards Sasuke. In a low voice, Hien told the children it's time to leave. Hien and Mando began escorting the children out of the hamlet and into a mountain path. They could hear the sounds of fighting and people screaming coming from behind them. Hien sensed they were being followed and told Mando to lead the children to safety while he stays behind and halts the Imperial pursuit. He then turned to Sasuke and told him that he must get stronger to protect their home, and that was the last time they ever saw Hien. As Sasuke remembered Hien's words, Mando patted him on the head and told him that what was lost will never come back, and the same is true for the lives that were lost that day. He then told Sasuke that it's the young folk who will inherit Rokaku and they must work together to protect it. Sasuke replied that's what Hien said, that he told him to protect the hamlet. Mando smiled as Sasuke remembered Hien's words. Suddenly Rokaku became lively. The villagers dropped everything they were doing and everyone gathered around the entrance. Sasuke asked Mando what was happening and Mando replied that it doesn't seem to be anything bad as everyone looks to be happy. The crowd that had gathered at the entrance began to move through the street, and in the center of the crowd, Sasuke could spot a girl wearing a bright pink outfit. Sasuke excitedly shouted out that Kasumi's back and jumped off the cliff onto the path below. Mando sprinted after him as Chapter 1 comes to an end. Chapter 2. Chapter 2 opens with Sasuke heading down the mountain path in a frenzy, screaming in his head that Kasumi is back. Sasuke had a crush on Kasumi and Mando would sometimes tease him for it. Kasumi was a kunoichi who had been sent by Hanzo to aid the Liberation Army in the war against the Scarlet Moon Empire. As he raced to Rokaku, memories of his time with Kasumi in Swallow House came flooding back. in memory of when he was 6, only a few days before Kasumi turned 12 and left the house. Sasuke had fallen from a tree and hurt his knees. He went out of his way to seek out Kasumi to apply medicine to him, and as she applied the balm to his knees, Sasuke's chest filled with her warm smile. Sasuke finally reached Rokaku and found everyone gathered at Hanzo's house. Hanzo's house was large enough to accommodate half of the people, and the other half waited outside looking through the windows. Kasumi was the pride of Rokaku for the role she played in defeating the Scarlet Moon Empire, and everyone wanted to celebrate her triumphant return. Sasuke tried to push his way through the crowd into the mansion, but there was no room to move and he couldn't get inside. The crowd fell silent as Hanzo's voice could be heard congratulating Kasumi on her success in battle. Kasumi responded that his praise is too great and that she didn't do much. The sound of Kasumi's voice made Sasuke impatient, and he told those around him to get out of his way because he can't see her. A man in front of him turned around and shushed him. Just then, Mondo picked up Sasuke and sat him on his shoulders. Sasuke was so excited he forgot to thank Mondo and immediately set his gaze at Kasumi, who was kneeling before Hanzo. However, Sasuke felt uncomfortable when he laid his eyes on her, and he didn't know why. He felt that something about her was different from the Kasumi he once knew. Maybe because she had gotten taller, or maybe because she had gained experience thanks to the war. Mondo teased Sasuke, commenting that she's become a lot prettier. Sasuke told him to shut up and gave him a light punch. He then shifted his gaze back to Kasumi. Hanzo told Kasumi that the fall of the Scarlet Moon Empire and the establishment of the Tauren Republic was only possible because of her aid, and that everyone in Rokaku acknowledges her talents. He then told her that Hien, the former Vice-Chancellor, lost his life when the Empire attacked and that he'd like her to take the role. Both Sasuke and Mondo nodded in agreement, and the crowd roared in cheers at Hanzo's words, calling out to Kasumi to accept the role. Despite just being offered the role of Vice-Chancellor, Sasuke noticed the expression on Kasumi's face was one of sadness and loneliness as she looked down at the floor. Kasumi then told Hanzo that she's grateful for his offer, but she's still young and immature, and it would be inappropriate for her to accept the role of Vice-Chancellor. Sasuke was so startled by Kasumi's rejection of the offer that he almost fell from Mondo's shoulders. All of the other ninjas had a similar reaction, and the crowd began to buzz in confusion as to why she'd reject the offer. Hanzo looked at the crowd before turning back to Kasumi and explaining to her that there's nobody else to fill the role except for her. He informed her that President LePont requested that she be stationed in Gregminster and that they wished to maintain friendship and good relations. He told her it would be lonely in another country without a title, and asked her what would the people of Tauren think of the people of Rokaku if they didn't award those who distinguished themselves in battle. Kasumi again refused Hanzo's offer, telling him that she's not ready. As Kasumi refused Hanzo, Sasuke noticed that the Kasumi in front of him was no longer the Kasumi of old, though he couldn't bring into words why she was different. In his heart, he begged for her to accept Hanzo's offer, as he felt it was the only way for her to return to the Kasumi he once knew. Hanzo crossed his arms and said he understands, and that he can't force her to accept the role if she doesn't want it. Sasuke accidentally cut Hanzo off when he involuntarily shouted out, "Wait a minute." Everyone turned their attention to Sasuke, but as soon as he noticed Kasumi looking at him, blood rushed to his head and his cheeks burned red. Hanzo asked him what's the matter, but in his embarrassment, Sasuke no longer knew what he wanted to say. He jumped off Mondo's shoulders and ran from Hanzo's house with unshakable emotions. As he ran through Rokaku, he wondered why Kasumi had refused the role of Vice-Chancellor, but more than that, he was worried about how she had changed in the 2.5 years since she left, and he wondered what happened to her during that time. Sasuke was so engrossed in his thoughts that he ran headfirst into a pillar of a half-built house. Mondo, who had been chasing after him, called out to him and asked him what's going on. He told Sasuke that both Kasumi and Hanzo are worried about him. Sasuke replied that it's nothing, before finally asking what was on his mind. He asked Mondo if he noticed if something was different about Kasumi. Mondo seemed to know the reason, but it was an embarrassing question for him to answer and explain to a child, so he tried to answer it in a different way without touching on the real reason. He started by explaining that all of the skilled ninja lost their lives in the battle against the Imperial Army, and there is no one in the hamlet other than Kasumi who could serve as Vice-Chancellor. Sasuke replied that it's an honor to be praised by Hanzo, and that he'd happily take the role if it was offered to him. He then asked Mondo, isn't it strange that Kasumi refused? Mondo asked him what he means by strange, and Sasuke replied that she seems distant and that she wasn't like this in the old days. Mondo grinned and told Sasuke to follow him to the riverbank where they could talk privately. Mondo explained that Kasumi spent the last 2.5 years in the Liberation Army with Tirmakdal. Sasuke interrupted and asked Mondo if something happened to her during that time. Mondo told him to calm down and listen. He explained to Sasuke that during her time away, Kasumi has become an adult. Sasuke asked what he meant by Kasumi becoming an adult, and again Mondo tried to answer without being too specific. He explained it means growing as a human being. He tried to compare it to living in Swallow House, that children training are unable to leave Rokaku until they graduate, that they live without experiencing the outside world, and because of that, they have a narrow view of the world, and that they're still children. Sasuke replied by telling Mondo that he wants to go into the outside world as soon as possible, and Mondo told him that people can't grow up without experiencing it. Mondo then explained to him that Kasumi saw, heard and experienced many things while in the Liberation Army that caused her to grow not only as a ninja, but as a person. Sasuke then asked him about the Liberation Army. Mondo told him that when Hanzo led the ninjas to aid the Liberation Army during their assault on Gregminster, he learned that the Liberation Army was a powerful organization. He told Sasuke about how Victor broke the Imperial Vanguard, how Flick charged across the battlefield like lightning, how Joshua and his Dragon Knights flew across the sky, and how Peshmerga, a Black Knight, defeated an Imperial camp. Sasuke could feel his body temperature rising as Mondo told him about all the great warriors in the Liberation Army. Sasuke soon began to lose track of the amount of people Mondo told him about as he realized he didn't know anything about the outside world, just as Mondo had said. Aside from Hanzo, the only strong people Sasuke knew were Mondo and Kasumi. Sasuke then interrupted Mondo's story, and with a hint of anger in his voice, he asked Mondo just how strong the people in the Liberation Army really are, that surely there's no way they're stronger than Kasumi. Mondo replied that Kasumi may be skilled, but there are many people out there that are stronger than her. Ignoring the look of surprise and shock on Sasuke's face, Mondo continued the story and told him about what an amazing young man Tirmakdal is. He then described Tyr, saying that he's no older than Kasumi, but he handles his staff as if it were flowing water, that he's a very strong person and his body bears a true rune. In astonishment of Mondo's praise of Tyr, Sasuke replied, "That's amazing." Mondo's story had been so long that the sun had begun to set, and just as he was ready to wrap it up and return home, Sasuke asked him what exactly was the reason why Kasumi became an adult. Mondo scratched his head and let out a wry smile, hoping Sasuke would have dropped the subject by now. He once again answered the question, this time by explaining that Kasumi must have been shocked to see just how inexperienced she was when fighting alongside so many great warriors, and that going into the world and knowing your own situation is the first step to adulthood. Sasuke was skeptical, but when he thought of the look on Kasumi's face earlier, he couldn't help but believe what Mondo had said. Mondo noticed the look in Sasuke's face and asked him if he was surprised to hear that there are people stronger than Kasumi. Sasuke stood up with tremendous vigor and stared at Mondo. Until now, Sasuke had been training with the sole goal of surpassing Kasumi. He was shocked to hear there were so many people stronger than her, but the real reason for his attitude was he felt that the Liberation Army had taken away her cheerful smile as fighting alongside them made her feel inexperienced. Sasuke yelled out and questioned what the hell is the Liberation Army. He ran down the riverbank and shouted at Mondo that he's going to start special training in the morning and he better not try to stop him. The forest was so dark that Sasuke didn't notice the smile on Mondo's face as Chapter 2 comes to an end. Chapter 3. Chapter 3 begins the next day with Sasuke and Mondo climbing a mountain path to begin his training. They trained in martial arts, swordsmanship and other ninjutsu techniques. Later that day, Kasumi returned to the Tauren Republic. After training all morning, Sasuke and Mondo had to help with the manual labor to rebuild Rokaku. However, Sasuke wanted to continue his training instead. As a compromise, Mondo convinced Sasuke to carry the lumber as a form of training to help with his strength and conditioning. Once their shift doing manual labor was over, the two would spar. However, Sasuke was exhausted from carrying the lumber and was easily defeated by Mondo. 2 weeks into Sasuke's special training, the two would spar again. Sasuke was thrown backwards by Mando's attack and rolled on the ground back to his feet. He immediately charged Mando as Mando taunted him, but Mando dodged the attack effortlessly. Sasuke turned around and tried to attack several times with his blade, but Mando easily blocked all of the attacks. Mando took an offensive stance and held up his sword. Sasuke readied his sword to deflect the attack, but the next moment he was rolling on the ground. Mando had pretended to use his sword to attack, but kicked Sasuke's feet from under him instead. Sasuke tried to stand up, but Mando grinned as he swung his fist at Sasuke's chest, stopping right before it made contact. Mando told Sasuke that if he had a claw in his hand, he would have been dead now. Sasuke called him cowardly for fighting like that. Mando laughed and held out his hand to help Sasuke up. He told Sasuke not to get frustrated, that the enemy won't show mercy in combat. He then asked Sasuke what would he do if the enemy misled him with such a tactic. Sasuke puffed his cheeks in frustration, and with a scowl on his face he commented how frustrating it is that he can't even beat Mando. Mando told Sasuke that what he did is called a diversion, and asked him what he meant when he said he can't beat him. Sasuke in frustration told Mando to leave him alone. Mando laughed as he ruffled Sasuke's hair and told him not to be impatient, that he's still young and that he still needs to gain experience. He then told Sasuke that he's hungry and it's time to go. As Mando gathered all of the weapons into a bag and began walking away, Sasuke remained still. He started thinking about his reason for wanting to become stronger. He hoped that if he became stronger than everyone in the Liberation Army, then surely Kasumi would regain her smile. But he felt frustration at the realization that he was no match for anyone in the Liberation Army, as he couldn't even beat Mando. He pictured Kasumi in his mind and felt a pain in his chest, but then his frustration turned to blame. He blamed Kasumi's behavior on her own immaturity, but ridiculing Kasumi, the representative of Rokaku, was tantamount to ridiculing Rokaku itself. Sasuke began gritting his teeth in anger at his thoughts and shouted out to Mando to come back and face him again. Mando grinned as he turned around and commented that it looks like Sasuke hasn't had enough and he'll happily defeat him again. Mando dropped the bag of weapons to the ground and took a single kunai out of his pocket. He jumped into the trees, leaping from branch to branch until he disappeared. Mando's voice could be heard coming from the forest, saying that he'll only use this single kunai and Sasuke can use anything he wants from the bag to defeat him. Sasuke searched through the bag and grabbed shurikens and a small sword. He began searching the trees for where Mando was hiding. Spotting a tree with swaying leaves in the distance, Sasuke leapt up into the trees. But just when he was about to attack, a gust of wind blew through the trees and the branch Sasuke was standing on snapped. Sasuke fell to the ground but adjusted his body and managed to land on his feet. At the same time Sasuke landed, something hit his head and Mando called out, asking him what if that was a shuriken and not an acorn. Sasuke angrily told Mando not to make fun of him and threw a shuriken in Mando's direction, but Mando hid himself behind a tree trunk and avoided it. The two threw projectiles at each other for a while, with Sasuke throwing shurikens and Mando throwing acorns. Mando held the advantage thanks to having the high ground and the cover of trees, while Sasuke struggled to aim and avoid Mando's attacks while running around in the open. Mando told Sasuke that when you're in an advantageous position, you should be bold and intimidate your opponent. Sasuke unleashed 3 shurikens at Mando, and as Mando hid himself, Sasuke jumped up into the trees. Mando laughed as Sasuke made his way up into the trees, but suddenly the branch Mando was standing on snapped. Sasuke pressed his advantage and threw several shurikens at Mando, but Mando cut the ivy hanging from the tree and used it like a lasso to entangle Sasuke's legs. Mando told Sasuke not to rely solely on his weapons to win a fight, but to pay attention to his surroundings and use everything that's available to him. Sasuke drew his sword and cut himself free from the ivy. Mando charged him with tremendous force and pulled out his kunai. Sasuke readied his sword, but it was knocked from his hand by Mando's kunai. Mando grinned and began taunting Sasuke, telling him he'll never be a strong ninja if he fights like that, and he'll never be stronger than the people of the Liberation Army. Blood began rushing to Sasuke's head in anger, and he shouted at Mando. Mando continued taunting him, telling him that he requested special training to surpass the warriors of the Liberation Army, but he's not even close to matching their skill, especially that of Lord Tyr. Mando's comments made Sasuke even angrier, and he shouted out to Mando not to say that. Sasuke threw a shuriken at Mando and ran to create some distance. He knew if he hadn't run, he would have lost himself in his anger. He tried to take a breath to calm his mind, but the anger bubbling up inside him couldn't be stopped. As Mondo closed the gap, Sasuke couldn't shake the thought of Tyr from his mind, but he chanted in his head that he will defeat him. With Mondo getting closer, Sasuke charged him with his sword in hand. With the two 10 steps away, they both leapt up off the ground through the air and matched blades. Sasuke landed in a kneeling position on the branch of a tree and begun gathering leaves under his feet. He could hear Mondo approaching him from behind, 15 steps, 10 steps. The moment Mondo was 5 steps away, Sasuke turned around and shook the branches of the tree. As the leaves fluttered between Sasuke and Mondo, Sasuke jumped off the tree and threw a shuriken at Mondo. The shuriken hit Mondo's chainmail, but Sasuke's attacks didn't stop there. The leaves and the shuriken were what Mondo called earlier diversions. Mondo had lost sight of Sasuke and the leaves. Sasuke then leapt towards Mondo and swung his sword. Sasuke muttered in his mind that he won, but in an instant, Mondo flickered and disappeared like smoke. Surprised by the sudden disappearance of Mondo, Sasuke was unable to assume a landing position and crashed into the ground rather painfully. Mondo whispered to him in an apologetic voice that he's sorry, that he didn't expect Sasuke to use such a move. Sasuke replied that it's cowardly to use a rune, and if he hadn't used it, he would have won. Mondo had used his Mayfly rune, a rune that had been handed down to ninjas since ancient times. It allowed its bearer to split into 3 and instantly travel a short distance by projecting one's thoughts. Mondo laughed at Sasuke's comments and told him not to be so angry. With happiness in his voice, Mondo told Sasuke that he's improved and that the training is paying off. He then asked Sasuke how he's feeling after their fight. Sasuke replied that he's in pain and that he thinks he sprained his leg. Mondo told him that he needs to concentrate on resting for a while, and when his leg heals, they'll train some more. Sasuke replied that he understands, but in his mind he was sticking out his tongue at Mondo. Sasuke had lied about injuring his leg. After seeing Mondo use the Mayfly rune to escape his attack, Sasuke thought of a quick way to become stronger, a shortcut that didn't require training or experience. Kasumi, Mondo and Tyr, all of those he sought to surpass Spora rune, and Sasuke wished for one of his own. And that's the end of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. Chapter 4 opens at night. Sasuke had been hiding in the darkness watching the roads. He spotted a man travelling through Banner Forest with a wagon full of goods. He threw a shuriken at the man's torch, which extinguished the flame, and the man let out a scream. Sasuke then approached the man with a sword in his hand and asked him if he's a black market trader. The merchant responded in a terrified voice that he isn't, but when he relit his torch, he stood dumbfounded at the sight of a small child standing before him wearing a black mask and holding a short tie-like sword. The merchant berated Sasuke, saying he thought he was a bandit, and shouted at him for scaring him, but without even flinching, Sasuke asked the merchant if he had any runes. The merchant continued down the forest path as he told Sasuke to go play bandit somewhere else. Sasuke kicked off the ground with all his might and flew past the merchant. The merchant called him a brat and asked him what the hell he's doing, but as soon as the man shouted, his pants fell down as Sasuke had cut the belt around his waist. The merchant angrily tried to pick up his dagger, which was on his belt, but Sasuke threw a shuriken at the hilt, knocking it away and grazing the merchant's hand. Sasuke again asked the merchant to show him his runes and threw another shuriken that landed at the merchant's feet. The merchant relented and told Sasuke he can take the runes. He then laid out the runes he had, the skunk rune, the wall rune, the waking rune, and the firefly rune. Sasuke looked at the runes and asked the merchant what kind of powers they have. Sasuke listened to the merchant's explanation, and as soon as he finished speaking, Sasuke replied in a gruff voice that those runes are strange. He then asked the merchant if he has anything more impressive. The merchant responded that this was all he has. He didn't fully understand what Sasuke meant about something more impressive, as these were expensive runes. Sasuke replied that he can't get strong with runes like these and told the merchant to go. The merchant responded, "Huh?" in a confused tone, and Sasuke told him that the next time he comes through this road, he better bring a stronger rune. The merchant responded that he understands and quickly began packing the runes before returning back the way he came. Ever since his sparring match against Mondo, Sasuke had wanted to obtain a rune. There were runes in Rokaku, but they were under strict control and they couldn't be touched. Keeping up with the ruse of recovering from his fake injury, Sasuke slept during the day and snuck out of Rokaku at night, masquerading as a bandit while seeking out merchants travelling through Banner Forest in his pursuit of a rune. Not many travellers passed in recent days, as the borders between the city-states of Joustin and the newly established Tauren Republic were still disputed. The only people travelling between the two nations were black market merchants who were making a fortune selling goods to the resource-exhausted Tauren Republic. After 3 days of acting as a bandit, Sasuke still hadn't found a rune to his liking. He knew he couldn't fake being injured for much longer, and the people of Rokaku were currently in an uproar after a number of shurikens were missing from the warehouse. Feeling impatient, Sasuke once again hid in the trees by the road, hoping for someone with a strong rune to pass through. As he was hiding in the trees, he heard two voices coming from the direction of the Tauren Republic. One was a gentleman's voice and the other was a cheerful boy's voice. Sasuke had decided he would only attack black market merchants, but he was running out of time and growing impatient, so he decided to make an exception as he wasn't going to take their lives. Sasuke put on his mask and waited silently in the trees for the travellers to get closer. As the two travellers approached, Sasuke was so surprised that he almost stopped breathing. In the light of their torch, he saw a man with long blonde hair, a scar on his cheek, wearing a green cloak and carrying a large axe on his shoulder, and beside him was a boy of similar age to Kasumi. He was dressed in red with a green bandana, and in his hands was a black staff. Sasuke gulped. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The boy looked exactly the same as how Mondo described Tyr Makdul, the leader of the Liberation Army. Sasuke looked at the boy's staff and saw that it had been repainted, but it was clearly marked with dents and scratches, showing signs of having experienced many battles. He wondered if it really was Tyr and decided to test him by throwing a shuriken at him. Sasuke felt a jolt run through his body. He was shocked to see the boy instinctively turn and effortlessly deflect the shuriken with his staff. The boy's movements were so vivid that Sasuke was certain it was Tyr Makdul, the boy who had stolen the old Kasumi from him. Tyr stepped forward and called out who's there, asking what the hell they think they're doing. He then shouted, demanding his attacker reveal himself. Sasuke almost jumped out from behind a tree to confront him, but stopped himself at the last moment. His opponent was none other than Tyr Makdul, the person he aimed to defeat and surpass. But he knew he couldn't compete with Tyr as he couldn't even defeat Mondo. Sasuke remembered words that Mondo once spoke to him. If you think your opponent is strong, you will lose. Sasuke began to repeat in his head that he's strong, trying to hype himself up until he felt confident he could win. Just then, his body began to heat up as images of Kasumi flashed through his mind. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. If he could steal Tyr's rune, he could achieve his goals of becoming stronger. Sasuke shouted out at Tyr that he'd been waiting for him and demanded he hand over his rune, otherwise he'd kill him. Tyr replied by asking him what he's talking about. Gremio turned to Tyr and told him that judging by his voice, he appears to be a young boy. Gremio then called out to the boy hidden in the trees and asked him to stop with this silly prank. Sasuke threw a shuriken at the torch Gremio was carrying, and Gremio let out a scream as the flame was extinguished. Gremio declared it's cowardly to sneakily attack someone in the dark. Sasuke was surprised by Gremio's words and responded by asking if he's really being cowardly. Gremio told him that it is cowardly, as fighting is about facing each other head on and battling fair and square. Sasuke replied that he'd only ever been taught how to fight this way. Gremio asked in shock, what does he mean he's been taught to fight like this? Sasuke told him to stop being so nosy, but Sasuke was interrupted by Tyr telling Gremio to get down and hide. Peeking out from behind a tree, Sasuke saw Tyr taking up a defensive stance with a staff. Tyr stared into the darkness around him as he told Sasuke he doesn't know who he is, but he seems to know him and his rune. He then lowered his gaze. Tyr's expression and gesture surprised Sasuke. Sasuke had led himself to believe that the members of the Liberation Army were bad people who bullied Kasumi, and that's why she seemed so different, so there's no way he was going to back down. Sasuke told Tyr that he knows he has a true rune that makes him stronger. Tyr replied by asking Sasuke if he's trying to become stronger. Sasuke replied that's right and told Tyr to hand over his rune. Tyr looked up and replied no matter what, regardless of the reason, he cannot and will not hand over the rune to anybody in order to protect people and their loved ones. Sasuke grew angry and demanded Tyr hand over the rune right now, otherwise he'll suffer terrible consequences. But before Tyr could respond, Sasuke threw a shuriken at him, but once again Tyr deflected it with his staff. Tyr stayed on alert, anticipating another attack. Sasuke threw yet another shuriken at him, and again Tyr effortlessly deflected it. Tyr called out to Sasuke, who was still hiding in the trees, saying he doesn't want to fight, but he made a promise to someone to protect this rune. He told the boy he doesn't know who he is and asked him not to think badly of him. Sasuke responded that he needs the rune. He then circled around Tyr and threw another shuriken at him before leaping out of the trees and charging him. Tyr turned and swung his staff to deflect the shuriken. For a moment, Sasuke thought his guard dropped, but Tyr's form was flawless. Using his momentum, Sasuke slashed his sword at Tyr, but Tyr easily blocked the blow with his staff. Sasuke attacked again, but Tyr dodged with ease. Sasuke struck several more times, but not once did his blade come close to reaching Tyr, and despite the ferocity of his attacks, Sasuke had been driven back near a tree by the side of the road. In frustration and anger, Sasuke shouted at Tyr that he can't lose to him. As he shouted, he swung his sword from above. Tyr held his staff up over his head to block the attack, but Sasuke quickly withdrew his sword, leaped backwards and threw a shuriken at Tyr's unguarded stomach. Sasuke let out a confident laugh, but Tyr dodged the shuriken and it pierced Gremyo's cloak. Gremyo let out a shriek and begged the young master to stop. Tyr ordered Gremyo to stay hidden and step forward to confront Sasuke. As he swung his staff at Sasuke, he commented that since he's using shurikens, that must mean he's from Rokaku. While blocking the attack, Sasuke replied that he doesn't know any Rokaku. As their weapons collided, Tyr told him it doesn't matter whether he is or isn't from Rokaku, he should stop what he's doing. Sasuke replied that he won't stop. He then declared that he's going to get stronger and he will defeat the Liberation Army. Sasuke jumped backwards and threw 2 more shurikens at Tyr as he moved off the road and back into the safety of the dark forest. Sasuke knew he had no chance of winning if they fought head-on. With that in mind, he ran through the darkness and threw several more shurikens at Tyr to lure him away. Tyr chased after him, dodging every shuriken he threw. Sasuke then jumped up into a tree and hid himself to catch his breath. Tyr caught up, and much to Sasuke's surprise, Tyr's breathing was undisturbed. Sasuke then realized the difference in skill between himself and Tyr was far greater than he realized. Sasuke called out to Tyr from the top of a tree. He told Tyr he's giving him one last chance to hand over the rune, otherwise he'll kill him. Tyr responded in a calm voice as he walked towards the tree Sasuke was hiding in. He told Sasuke that he can't kill him, and asked him if it's really strength that he's looking for. Sasuke responded it is, that he's already said it many times. Tyr told him that everyone wishes to be strong. He told him that the rune he bears doesn't make him stronger. It grants him power, but it doesn't grant him strength. He then asked Sasuke if he'd heard of the Liberation War. For those that don't know, while the Gate Rune War is the official name of the war used by historians in the Suikoden world and also for the player, the common folk who suffered under the Scarlet Moon Empire refer to it either as the Liberation War or the Tauren Liberation War. Tyr stopped under the tree Sasuke was hiding in and looked up at him. With the moonlight lighting up Tyr's face, Sasuke could see the sad look in Tyr's eyes. Tyr explained to him that the Liberation War started when a certain magician sought out the power of his rune for revenge. Sasuke was stunned by Tyr's words. Revenge was exactly what he sought, as he believed Kasumi had been bullied by the Liberation Army. Tyr continued his story. He explained to Sasuke that the magician who sought the rune went astray, and drew people who loved her into battle until everything was lost. He told Sasuke that the rune grants power, but if you rely on that power, you can become weak. Sasuke shouted that it doesn't matter. Blood rushed to his head in anger as he shouted at Tyr that he doesn't believe what he's saying, and telling him not to lump him together with some magician. Tyr responded by telling Sasuke that he's already fascinated by the power of a rune, and he's already losing his heart to it. Sasuke told Tyr to shut up as he threw a shuriken at him and jumped to another branch. As Tyr deflected it, Sasuke threw another and Tyr deflected it again. This time Sasuke could be heard letting out a cry of surprise. The second shuriken Tyr deflected flew back towards Sasuke and cut his mask off. Tyr looked up at Sasuke's exposed face with a sad smile and told him that he won't hold his actions against him. He advised Sasuke to stop looking for strength in runes, as there's a difference between having power and being strong. With his blood still boiling and adrenaline pumping, Sasuke called Tyr a fool. He no longer cared about fighting like a ninja. He threw another shuriken at Tyr and leapt at him in a frenzy. As Sasuke attacked, Tyr's words about losing his heart to the power of a rune spun in his head. Every time Tyr deflected a shuriken, Tyr's words seemed to ring true, and every time Tyr blocked his sword, he seemed to be a strong person. Sasuke desperately continued his attack on Tyr, hoping and waiting to counteract Tyr's words, but none of his attacks could get through Tyr's guard. Sasuke had only 2 shurikens left. He glared at Tyr and told him this was the last one. Tyr took a deep breath and repositioned himself. He told Sasuke to come at him. Sasuke threw the shuriken and jumped to the ground some distance away. Tyr evaded the shuriken and Sasuke landed in a kneeling position some distance away and begun gathering leaves with his hands. As he felt Tyr running towards him, Sasuke shouted, "How about this?" At the same time as he shouted, he threw all of the leaves he had gathered at Tyr as hard as he could, and then threw his last shuriken as the leaves fluttered in the air between them. A high-pitched sound echoed through the leaves. Tyr had once again easily deflected it, despite it being concealed by the leaves, but he had lost sight of Sasuke, who was once again hiding in the trees. As Sasuke prepared to jump out of the tree to attack Tyr with his sword, a woman's voice echoed in the darkness of the forest, asking Sasuke what he's doing. Before Sasuke realized it, Kasumi was standing beside him with an angry look in her eyes and slapped him in the face. With a thunderous sound, pain ran through Sasuke's cheek. His mind went blank and he barely knew what just happened. He placed his hand on his aching cheek and slowly looked up. This time, instead of anger, Kasumi looked like she was about to cry. Sasuke muttered Kasumi's name and Kasumi glared at him with sadness in her eyes. Kasumi asked Sasuke what he's doing out here. She told him that she heard there were bandits on the road, but she never imagined it could be him. Sasuke stammered when he heard the word bandit and told Kasumi that's not true. Kasumi again asked him what he's doing out here. Sasuke stood in silence for a moment. He sensed that Kasumi wouldn't forgive him if he didn't tell her the truth, so he puffed his cheeks and told her that he wanted a rune to get stronger, so he could get revenge against the Liberation Army for bullying her. Blushing and confused by Sasuke's words, Kasumi asked him, "Bullied?" Tyr immediately put down his staff and asked Sasuke what does he mean he bullied Kasumi. Sasuke told them that Mondo told him about the Liberation Army, that Kasumi had become an adult while she was away. He then said that when he saw how different Kasumi was from how he remembered, he thought she'd been bullied. Kasumi had a look on her face as if she wanted a hole to open up beneath her and swallow her up. She told Sasuke that she wasn't bullied and that the people in the Liberation Army were all nice to her. Sasuke muttered, "So you weren't bullied then?" Kasumi replied that it's all a misunderstanding on his part. Sasuke almost fell off the branch when he felt lightheaded from the embarrassment. Kasumi and Sasuke jumped down from the tree and Kasumi bowed to Tyr, who was about to burst out laughing. Kasumi apologized to Tyr for Sasuke's behavior and asked him to please forgive him. While grinning, Tyr responded that it's fine. He figured there was some kind of misunderstanding, but his body had been rusty and it was a fun match. Seeing Tyr's smile made Sasuke want to disappear. He had a cheerful smile and a gentle attitude towards Kasumi and a tolerant personality that forgave people. The Tyr he had imagined in his mind was very different from the person standing before him. Sasuke averted his eyes in embarrassment at his actions, but he felt uncomfortable when he heard Kasumi speak to Tyr. Kasumi told him that everyone was worried when they couldn't find him after taking Gregminster, that she was worried about him too and she's glad he's safe. Kasumi's tone was somewhat lustrous and not at all like how she normally spoke. Sasuke turned his gaze to Kasumi and saw her discreetly kneeling in front of Tyr. Tyr responded that he's sorry about leaving the way he did and asked her how everyone's doing. Kasumi replied that they all hope he'll return. Tyr told her that if he goes back to Gregminster, it'll bring back too many memories. With a sad look in her eyes, Kasumi asked Tyr where he plans on going. Sasuke had seen that expression on Kasumi's face before. It was the exact same expression she had when she refused Hanzo's offer of becoming Vice-Chancellor. He felt as if he finally understood the real reason why she had turned down the role. Kasumi took a deep breath as Tyr spoke to her in a soft tone. He told her he's happy she's concerned about him and that he has no destination in mind for his trip, that maybe he'll return to Gregminster someday, and he asked her to please give everyone his regards. Kasumi responded she understands as Tyr turned to look for Gremio, who was frantically calling out for Tyr in the darkness. As Tyr was about to say his goodbyes to Kasumi and Sasuke, Sasuke asked him a question. He wanted to know how he can become stronger, that he learned today he shouldn't rely on a rune, but he doesn't know how to become strong without one. Tyr looked at Sasuke and told him that he believes the true strength of a person lies in their mind and their heart. A heart that wants to accomplish something, a heart that wants to protect what's important, and a heart that takes action. He told Sasuke that strength takes many forms and his desire to protect Kasumi is one of them. Sasuke was embarrassed by Tyr's words but asked him one last question. He wanted to know if he could be strong like him one day. Tyr let out a laugh and told Sasuke that he has the qualities to become stronger, but he advised Sasuke not to imitate a bandit anymore, as taking things from others is what weak people do. Sasuke said he understands. Now that the misunderstanding had been cleared up, he was finally able to accept Tyr's words. Sasuke realized that he might still be young and immature, but he knows he has the heart to accomplish something and the heart to protect what's important, just as Tyr had said. Sasuke looked at Kasumi and saw the sadness in her eyes as she leaned against a tree watching Tyr walk away. He now fully understood her reasons but didn't know what to say to her, so he quietly made a vow to himself. He swore to get stronger in both body and mind, and together with everyone else he'll work hard until Rokaku surpasses the Liberation Army. The next day at Rokaku, Hanzo was speaking to Mando. He told Mando that Kasumi told him what Sasuke had been doing. Bowing low to the floor, Mando said to Hanzo that Sasuke's actions were shameful and he never thought he'd act like a bandit, but even more worrisome, he caused trouble for Lord Tyr. Hanzo let out a laugh and replied it's a rare opportunity to spar with Lord Tyr, and that after seeing Tyr's strength, Sasuke will be even more determined in his training. He then informed Mando that Kasumi strangely accepted the role of Vice Chancellor despite having previously refused it so stubbornly. Mando, who was worried he was going to be scalded by Hanzo for Sasuke's actions, looked up at Hanzo in relief and commented that when Kasumi found out that Sasuke was trying to protect her, she probably felt like she had to protect him and everyone else in the village, that it was a very Kasumi-like decision. Hanzo responded by saying that maybe it was a heavenly coincidence or maybe it was the virtue of Lord Tyr. Hanzo then asked Mando about Sasuke's training. Mando responded that Sasuke has shown remarkable improvement in his skills and he has confidence that Sasuke will eventually be capable of governing Rokaku. Hanzo smiled and commented if that happens then Hien would have been proud as Sasuke is his son. Hanzo and Mando then spoke about how tough it must have been for Hien to have to give up Sasuke. Ninjas with the rank of Jonin were forbidden from having a familial relationship with their children and had to give up their children who were raised in Swallow House. Jonin, or high-ranking ninja, are sent on the most important and dangerous missions. They needed to cut off all emotion to focus on their tasks, and parent-child bonds were considered to be a hindrance to their duties. As Hanzo and Mando finished speaking, Sasuke's voice could be heard from outside, calling out for Mando that he promised to train him some more today. Hanzo and Mando looked at each other and smiled as the story comes to an end. And that's it for Sasuke's backstory. As I mentioned at the beginning, this backstory came from a short story titled Chronicle of the Young Ninja from the Genso Suikoden Short Story Collection 2 that released in Japan in May 2001. Anyway, that's it for this video. If there are any other Suikoden or non-related Suikoden topics you want me to make videos on, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.